Hello, my name's Arthur, and this video is going to be about a claim that gets made very often in the comment section of my videos, which is that it is definitionally impossible for a cis gay man to be interested in a trans man. And if he is, that means that he's actually not gay, he is bisexual. So that's a claim that I find very funny. I get these comments again all the time, and honestly they entertain me because they seem very silly. And I have poked fun at them before, but I've never made an earnest attempt at explaining why that's incorrect. And so I want to try to make that argument in this video. And so to be clear, this video is not about bisexuals. I love bisexuals. I am friends with bisexuals. I have dated bisexuals. I have slept with bisexuals. And so I am not at all trying to make the claim that the best way to affirm your gender is sleeping with a cis gay man if you are a trans man. Absolutely not. Bisexuals are great. I am just trying to make the claim that, well, I've slept with many cis gay men, and they are genuinely gay. And in fact, something that, some of you might know is that I am dating a guy who is gay and queer. He is not bisexual, he is not interested in women, and in the video we filmed together, we got a ton of comments that were, of course, claiming that he must be bisexual. He isn't. I know him better than you guys know him. And so, yeah, I wanted to line out that argument about why it's reasonable that these gay men call themselves gay, even if they are also attracted to trans men. Okay, so why do I find it funny? I find it funny because I get all these comments that boil down to the idea that I'm not going to be interesting to people, that no one's going to be attracted to me, that it's impossible or unlikely that a gay guy would be interested in me. And my lived reality is quite different than that. So recently someone cited a study that only 12% of gay men would be open to dating a trans man, and also just was like, oh, but that's also due to social pressure. So 12%, but surely some of them are just saying that because they feel like they have to. And I thought that was hilarious because on my Grindr, so Grindr is all local, so you can see the same sort of grid of faces and torsos, honestly, that are within a radius of you at one point in time. And on my grid, over 12% of people have messaged me. So over 12% of the guys in my area are not just open to dating a trans man, but they're specifically open to this trans man, to me. And the idea that they think that they're doing some sort of altruistic good by messaging me on Grindr is hilarious to me. I'm like imagining this guy that opens up the app and is like, you know what I can do to affirm this trans man who I'm not actually attracted to, but I know as a good SJW I have to affirm him. I'm gonna send him a bunch of dick pics. Obviously not. Obviously they message me for the same reason that they message any other guy on this app. And so it's just hilarious, the idea that, yeah, I'm like, okay, is every guy on Grindr bisexual? That's ridiculous. So, anyways, emotionally I find it funny. And that's very clear to me. But I think that when I make these statements, people either think one of two things who are skeptical. They either think, one, that I'm lying, and that I'm making up that I get this kind of attention, which, like, okay, if you think that I'm a liar, like, whatever, I don't know what to say to you. I have better things to do with my time than lie to people on the internet. But some set of people sort of earnestly think, okay, well, maybe they identified as gay, but, like, this is bisexual, like, there's someone who's born male having sex with someone who's born female. I mean, that's not a gay thing, so they just must be bisexual. That's what's going on. And so that's the claim that I want to argue with, and that I want to try to make the case for why it makes sense to call these men gay, not bisexual. And I think that there is a genuine misunderstanding and a genuine set of people that are open to hearing sort of the explanation for this. So in some sense, you're too late. So some of the people who very militantly feel like cis gay men who are also attracted to trans men should not be using the word gay to describe themselves, well, you're too late. They are. They are in large masses, and they are frequently. The word gay has just evolved with time. As medical transition has become more viable, trans people are able to, really radically change our bodies to match what we feel inside, and to have sort of our physical secondary sex characteristics line up with, well, what gay men are attracted to. And so with that, the words that we use to talk about sexuality have evolved. And so this discussion about are cis gay men who are also attracted to trans men valid in calling themselves gay, it's almost a linguistics debate. It boils down to this idea of categorization, which is something that's of interest to a lot of academic fields. How do we, as people and as a culture and as a society, lump things into categories? How do we form similarities and use words to convey sort of an expectation about what we should, think that something entails, right? It would be very hard for us to describe quite literally all of the attributes of something over and over again, so we end up with words like white or like banana or like home to describe something that's much broader and much more vague. And those words change based on the context that we live in. And it's sort of natural that the category that most concisely conveys the information we're trying to get across would evolve based on the world we live in. Okay, that's all kind of jargony, but I want to give a concrete example. My boyfriend really likes to read books, and I really like to play this silly little card game. So often our mornings will be us sitting at the dining room table, and he's there on his laptop reading his book, and I'm there on my laptop playing my silly little card game. And so, when I ask him what he's doing, no, he's reading a book. Okay, well, how I'm using the word book is radically influenced by the fact that we're in the post-internet era, right? He's reading a book on a laptop, and that is not how we would ever have talked about books like 100 years ago, right? So in prepping for this video, because I'm very nerdy, I went onto the Webster's, the 1828 edition to see how they define book, and it's very rigidly about the physical nature of the book. So they say, it's a general name of every literary composition which is printed, and the name is also given to any number of written sheets when bound or sewed together. So it's really about, the pages are printed sewed together. And that made sense to convey the type of meaning and the expectations we had around a book for a very long time, until the internet came into play. And then all of a sudden, it was like, oh, actually, a book doesn't need to be about the physical concept. And sure, sometimes it still is. Sometimes that's what we mean when we say book. Sometimes we mean quite literally the pages. But sometimes we mean something broader. We mean, in fact, a long-form written work, which is now typically what we mean when we talk about book. This category evolved with the landscape of the world. And so now, it makes more sense for the book to mean sort of broadly a type of literature than it makes sense for it to mean something specific about the physical form of the book. And so I think this maps on kind of nicely to how the words around sexuality have evolved. Because the options for trans people and how we can exist in the world are super different. And what we can do with our bodies, the ways we can look, are really different. So of course, the words around sexuality have moved to be a little less rigidly about sex that you're assigned at birth, and to be more holistic about how your body looks, how you interact with the world, and gender identity, right? And so I'll frequently get comments, right, that are like, it's homosexuality, not homogenderality. And sure, it was, but now it kind of isn't. And so, why is it useful? Why does it make sense that the word now conveys something on average broader than just being rigidly about sex? I mean, sure, we could force people that are attracted to people who are trans to call themselves bisexual, but it doesn't make sense to force them to do that. Why? Well, it's because the category gay, it makes sense to describe these guys. Guys that are attracted to cis men and to trans men, exclusively, they look and function pretty similarly to guys that are attracted only to cis men. So we put them together in one category. And so, contrary to popular belief, it's not that we just snapped our fingers and rewrote the whole world around us and got everyone to see us how we wanted to be seen. No, I mean, guys just started to be attracted to us, and guys that behaved in, a pretty gay way. Right? They're attracted to the male form, to male secondary sex characteristics, to masculinity, to the fact that we're men. And so that's pretty gay. It makes sense to keep them all together. And yeah, sure, there are some gay men that are only interested in cis men, but there are some that aren't. And the thing is you wouldn't really know who is who unless you asked. And it just doesn't come up, except if you are literally the trans guy that is trying to have sex with the cis gay guy, you would have no idea whether that guy is open to trans guys or not. They all look kind of the same. So, why would we have a different word if they behave so similarly? And I think this is something where I understand the skepticism, because I think before I transitioned, I would have had no idea that this was what the landscape was like. And yeah, if the world we operated in was that there are some cis men who are exclusively attracted to other cis men, and there are some cis men who are exclusively attracted to trans men, then I would be like, okay, sure. We can make that two words. That probably should have two separate categories, because that's two kind of very distinct types of behavior. But that's not what it's like, actually. And in fact, it's very clear to me that the way that these men are attracted to me is because I'm a man. It's clear to me because I've masculinized myself over time, and the interest I've gotten from them has really, really increased because of that. So, as an example, before I had top surgery, I was sleeping with cis gay men, but, they weren't interested or excited in my chest. I taped it down using trans tape, and so it was kind of out of sight, but it, wasn't very aesthetic. And I was insecure about that. And my ex, who, again, was a cis gay man, identified as gay, was only interested in men, had never slept with women, I talked with him about this, and he was like, oh, I think about your chest like I think about the birthmark on my butt. It's kind of unsightly, but, whatever. There are some parts of us that aren't perfect, and we can be attracted to the whole picture, the whole person, and not just focus on that part. And at the time, I was like, I thought that was really sweet and really nice. And I still think it's really sweet and nice when I think about that. But now that I've had top surgery, people are attracted to my chest. They love my chest because I have a masculine chest and I have pecs. And that's what the people that, are interested in me are attracted to, because they're attracted to men and I am a man. And so I think that often when people ask this question earnestly about oh, but aren't they bisexual really? The trans community will spout back at you that, well, trans men are men, and, men being attracted to men is gay. But that's kind of unsatisfying. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, it's not that when you snap your fingers and identify as a man, that means that, waves and waves of gay men are going to come flooding at you, interested in you. It is in part about the physical stuff. People are physically attracted to our bodies, too. And so I know what you're thinking right now is what about the penis? And I know that because I get so many comments that but what about the penis? And the reality is, I think with the way that these comments get said, people have this impression that gay sex is like two guys just jamming penises together. And gay sex is not that. Yeah, we talk all the time, we say, okay, genital preferences are okay, some people have genital preferences. But there are genitals besides penises. And again, I'm like, gay sex often, though not always, is anal sex, where there is one penis, and then, and trans guys have that too. There are lots of ways that we can have sex that are literally identical to how you would have sex with a cis man. Anal sex, giving oral sex, looks literally identical. And in many cases, you would never know that the guy you were having sex with is trans unless he explicitly told you. So why is it that if one guy, is told by a trans guy that he's trans and has sex with him and is totally cool with it, but also doesn't interact with his transness at all, is just hopping in anally, doesn't look at the rest of him, and another guy learns that he's trans and is like, I'm kind of going to be mentally off-put by that. Why is one more gay than the other? In both cases, the ways that these people have sex looks the same, just one is sort of mentally off-put by the idea of transness. And I don't think that really makes sense to form a category around being mentally off-put by the idea of something, right, is what we're talking about. That's just not, that helpful. And sure, there are also many ways that trans men can have sex with cis men that look radically different than how cis men might have sex with cis men. Sure. But we still don't really need to form a different identity label around that, right? There are plenty of ways that people have sex that look really crazy and really different, and we don't need an out-of-the-bedroom label to talk about that. You don't walk down the streets being like, oh yeah, I am, insert set of, specific sexual preferences. That doesn't happen. And that's the thing, right? Gay is not just a sex label. It is a social label. There are a lot of other sort of connotations that come with it, and there are a lot of reasons why a couple of two men, regardless of whether, one is trans, both are trans, zero are trans, might exist in the world really functionally as a gay couple, and it makes sense to describe them as such. Because if they're both seen by the world as men, and they navigate the world as men, they get seen by the world as gay men. And that's, again, experiences that I literally have, right? My partner and I get called the F-slur in public. I get called the F-slur in public. We have the very sweet experience of navigating his, family gatherings as a couple that is, two guys, right? Where most of his family does not know that I'm trans. We go to gay clubs, we have gay friends, we participate in gay culture, we just function as gay men, so it makes sense to call us gay men. That's just how it is, right? And so that's what I mean. Empirically, on average, these guys that are interested in me, who are gay and interested in cis men and trans men, they just look really similar. They function in the world really similar to other gay men. They are not interested in women, they are only interested in men, they are attracted to masculinity, they vibe in gay spaces, they're in the same, social circles. The only difference is just they happen to be into trans guys. So I don't get why they would need to be in a different category. It doesn't make sense to call them bisexual. They're not interested in women. It doesn't make sense to come up with a new word, because how is it relevant to anyone except for the one person that they're sleeping with that their partner might be trans? Again, most people don't know I'm trans when they meet me. So it's literally something very specific and personal about how our genitals interact with the world. I don't know why that would ever go into an identity label. It doesn't make sense, especially, again, how my appearance is quite different from my genitals. The world has kind of moved beyond that, right? And in my experience, almost all of the guys that I encounter, again, gay guys, are interested in me even after they learn that I'm trans. It just is quite rare that I discover someone who is not interested in me after learning I'm trans. So it just feels so bizarre to carve out a category for the small fraction of people that are totally unwilling to be with me because I'm trans, when almost all gay guys are okay with it. And so, like, this happens in all sorts of contexts. Sometimes I disclose up front, like on apps, you can just see that I'm trans, and I get a ton of messages. Sometimes it happens at bars or clubs where I meet someone, I'm talking with them, I think I might go home with them, and I tell them, hey, I'm trans, by the way, like, is that okay with you? And the answer is yes. It is, like, literally almost always yes. And again, I have friends who are cis who get rejected for the size of their genitals more than I get rejected for my genitals. And I'm like, we don't have a whole separate label for gay men that are only interested in gay men with very large penises. Like, that's not its own label. We don't need a new label for the kinds of guys that are also into trans guys. The word gay just works. And it's like, kind of just a silly idea to me, right? When I'll talk with these guys about their sexuality and about how they think about how trans men fit into it. And so I've heard their explanations and why they still think of themselves as gay. In many cases, their sexual history, like, really lines up very well with that, right? They've slept with a crazy number of cis men, so, like, let's say over 50 cis men, 0 women, and, like, 0 to 2 trans men, including me. And I'm just like, why would you call that person bisexual? Like, why? If they don't identify as bisexual, and they've slept with, like, a crazy number of cis men and a couple trans men, why is that person bisexual, but the guy that slept with 50 cis men and 0 trans men is gay? Like, what's the use in that? Like, the thing that they're trying to convey to the world is that they are interested in men, and they're not interested in women, and then, you know, they're not trying to convey they're interested in every man. We're allowed to reject people. We can reject people because they're trans. We can reject people because of, you know, the color of their hair. We can reject people because they give off weird energy. We can reject people all we want. And so when you're saying you're gay, you're not saying that you're open to everyone, but you're saying you're open just broadly to guys. And so given that, like, a very, very significant number of gay men are open to cis and trans guys, then it's like a reasonable thing on average to be conveying when you say you're gay, that you're open to men and not women. And so that's how the word really functions these days. It just makes sense. And so, anyways, sure. I'm sure some people are going to hear all this and still claim that every man that I've ever slept with I have converted to be bisexual or must have been latent bisexual, and, like, whatever. But I hope for some of you that this might make sense, right? That the way that we use the label gay has changed because, well, trans people are part of the world now. And so, you know, categories change, and that this is an appropriate category to have to talk about attraction, is that gay can include cis men and trans men. And that at the end of the day, again, I am in love and in a stable relationship and have lots of people attracted to me and am having a really good time, right? And I think that that's what we should wish for anyone in the world, right? Is, like, happy, healthy, consensual sex and relationships. And so I don't have a lot at stake of whether you, as a random person on the internet, believe the truth that the people I sleep with are gay. But I just at least hope that you can believe me that I'm having a good time, and then wish that for me, at least. Okay, that's that.